Hey guys, today we are featuring another game of cEDH. This is another game that I shot at Command Fest Orlando, and I'm actually joined by two guests. The first one up is Tyler at Celestial Games. He runs a virtual online game store and does a lot of pack openings and card reviews, so definitely check him out. With our next guest being Chukimon from Keeping It Casual. He makes great shorts on really cool judge interactions, and who knows, maybe he'll make one about this gameplay. But if anyone is interested in finding out more about their content, I'll have the links down below, or I guess in one of the corners, I'm not sure which one.
Also, have you heard the news? Your favorite cEDH YouTube channel has released some cool merch. And if you're interested in picking up some sweet new apparel, come check us out. Also, if you like what you see, consider joining our Patreon, as with your help, we can keep producing the videos you enjoy. And if you want to play with us, hop on our Discord. We have an ever-growing community that loves to talk MTG or whatever else strikes our fancy. And we would love to meet new people. Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board. Starting us off is Hidden Planet X on Korvold, Killer of Dockside. No longer a food chain Korvold, it's all about Dockside, and not just casting him, but sacking him and reanimating him, since Goblin is a dragon's favorite food. This is another fast turbo Nas list that can end the game quickly, even without the Nas, by just casting Korvold and beating face. Next up is Chukimon, playing Saffi, Eric's daughter. This is a quick, resilient, adaptive mid-range deck, designed to generate infinite ETB triggers and sacrifice effects. It luckily uses his commander as a combo piece in a multitude of resilient and redundant combo pieces, while utilizing good stax pieces to slow their opponents down. In the third spot, we have Tyler, piloting Kykar, Wind's Fury. This is a Jessica Storm list, using Kykar, Sensei Divining Stop, and a Reality Chip to draw his deck and generate a lot of Storm. Throw in a cost reducer, and you can generate mana as you loop, and finish it off with an Aetherflux Reservoir as a finisher. This deck can be surprisingly fast, and even if it can't combo, it can generate a whole army of spirits to harass their opponents. And bringing up the rear is Luke from Command Fest Orlando. He's brought Kykar, son of Yawgmoth, and while he's currently tuning the deck, this is a mono-black Storm list with a Reanimator sub-theme. But without further ado, let's get on to the gameplay. Chukimon starts off the game with a Bountiful Promenade and uses it to cast a Deafening Silence.
So you can't cast more than one non-creature? Yep. That's rude. I don't have a response, but that's rude.
Hidden plays a Verdant Catacombs and cracks it for a Bayou. He does shortcut as he casts an Ignoble Hierarch and hands the turn over while he searches out his land. Tyler plays a Command Tower as land and casts a Mox Diamond. He discards a Clifftop Retreat and can't do anything more due to the Deafening Silence. Luke plays an Ancient Tomb and casts a Chromox. He imprints an Unearth and has to pass. Chukimon plays a Marsh Flats as land and casts a Soul Ring. Hidden has a Forest and casts a Jeweled Lotus.
Okay, so I did debate on whether or not I should be casting Korvold at this moment, but if you guys saw my last gameplay, I went a little too hard and it did not pay off well. So I was a little worried about going down to 2 lands after the sacrifice trigger, and decided it's just not worth it for the dragon, at least this turn.
Tyler plays a Clearwater Pathway and casts a Talisman of Creativity. Luke has a High Market as land and takes 8 to cast Kykar, son of Yawgmoth. There's no response, and at his end step, Chukimon cracks his fetch for a Savannah, and then an Enlightened Tutor to put a Phyrexian Altar on top. Chukimon draws his altar and plays a Forest. He casts the altar, but in response, Tyler mana drains it, with Chukimon ending his turn casting his commander Saffi. Hidden plays a Badlands, and now it's time for Korvold. The dragon resolves, and responding to the sack ETB, Hidden floats a red from his Hierarch. He then sacks the Dork for a card draw and a counter on Korvold. Then for 2, Hidden follows it up with a Dockside Extortionist, gaining him 5 treasures, although they don't stay for long as he cracks 4 of them on 2 green and 2 black, drawing 4 cards in the process. The last treasure is then cracked for another green and a Korvold trigger, with Hidden using 4 of his mana to cast a Culling Ritual. The ritual resolves and Hidden gains 8 mana, 4 black and 4 green. And with the Deafening Silence now gone, he can unload his hand, as he casts a Mox Opal, Lion's Eye Diamond, and a Soul Ring. Although unfortunately for him, he drew 3 lands out of his 5 cards, and hands the turn over after that. Tyler untaps and makes 3 colorless off the mana drain. He uses it on a Chromatic Lantern and follows it up with a tap Holomar Depths. He rearranges his top 3, and he likes something apparently. Luke casts a Lion's Eye Diamond and a Lotus Petal. Then for 4 life and 2 damage off his Ancient Tomb, casts a Yawgmoth. Then for 2 life, he casts a Dark Ritual, which will then help him cast a Grey Merchant of Asphodel, which resolves and drains everyone for 7, while gaining Luke 21 life in the process. He then heads to combat and sends his now 4/4 Kykar at Chukimon, although looking back, Luke did miss a counter on Kykar. Chukimon plays a Forest and casts a Priest of Titania. Hidden has a Bloodstained Mire and cracks the fetch. He triggers Korvold and finds a Taiga from the fetch. Hidden then taps and sacks his Forest for a crop rotation. He triggers Korvold and then goes looking for a land. The list doesn't run a Cradle, and instead Hidden grabs a Command Tower, although it should have been another fetch. He then taps the tower for a Deathrite Shaman, and follows it up with a Rite of Flame for 2 red. He then preemptively casts a Veil of Summer, and casts a Wheel of Fortune. Holding priority though, he does crack his LED for a green. He pitches a hand full of land, and triggers Korvold. Although I do realize I need to tap my Mox before I sack the LED, so I tap it for a black mana. Although the wheel then resolves and everyone discards and draws 7. Then for 2, Hidden casts a Talisman of Resilience and a Vamp Tutor. Hidden then spends the rest of his mana on a Dashed Ragavan. He heads to combat, but before he can declare attackers, Chukimon swords Korvold. Hidden gains 13 life and then sends the monkey at Tyler, who takes the hit and exiles an Ethereum Sculptor. And unfortunately for me, I needed that card draw off Korvold, so I have to pass my turn. Tyler plays an Ancient Tomb as land and casts his Commander, with 1 mana floating. He plays a very stylish Mana Crypt. This triggers Kykar, and Tyler then follows it up with a Lotus Petal, gaining another Spirit. The petal is then cracked for a white to cast an Enlightened Tutor, trigger Kykar. The tutor finds a Reality Chip to put on top, with him then casting a Preordain. He gets a Spirit and keeps both cards on top and draws. An Izzet Signet then comes out, triggering Kykar. He then activates the Signet and sacks a Spirit to cast a tutored Reality Chip. He then sacks another Spirit to cast a Library of Lane, getting the Spirit right back. More Spirits then get sacked to equip the chip on Kykar, although we quickly realize he actually needs blue mana to equip, and we revert it back, with him passing after that.
I did not expect us to survive that.
I was this close.
Luke untaps and plays a Phyrexian Tower, and then casts a Mana Crypt. 6 life then gets him a Massacre Worm, with the only response being Tyler sacrificing his spirits before the worm can eat them. The worm does kill the priest and the Deathrite, with Hidden and Chukimon both taking 2. Luke then sacrifices his Gary to the tower for 2 black, using that mana on a Shallow Grave to bring his Gary back, this time draining the table for 10. Luke then takes some damage to cast an Unmarked Grave. He goes searching and ultimately bins a Dothy Voidwalker. Luke is going to lose his Gary at end step, so instead he sacrifices it to Yawgmoth to draw and put a -1/-1 counter on Kykar, which already has the -2/-2 from the worm, killing the commander and draining Tyler for 2. 6 life then gets Luke a Beseech the Queen, which finds him an Animate Dead. He still has some floating mana, and along with 2 life casts an Animate Dead. The enchantment resolves and he animates Dothy as a way to slow down the rest of the table. Finally ending his turn, sending Yawgmoth and Kykar at Chukimon for 11. Chukimon plays out a High Market and for 3 casts a Ranger Captain of Eos, who on ETB searches out a Starved Rusalka, as his Esper Sentinel is already in the graveyard, ending his turn with an Elvish Mystic. Hidden plays an Arid Mesa and recasts his Ragavan. He then bolts himself to search out a Blood Grip and casts a Twin Flame, targeting the Ragavan. He does hold priority as he flashes in a Dualcaster Mage, but unfortunately we make a mistake. In response to the Dualcaster, Luke sacks his Massacre Worm to Yawgmoth to kill the monkey and fizzle the Twin Flame, stopping the combo. But in reality, he would have needed to sack 2 things to kill the Dualcaster Mage instead. But that's how we played it, so I'm left with a Dualcaster Mage and an exiled Twin Flame, ending my turn with an Imperial Seal. Tyler is safe from his grip and recasts his commander, Kykar. He then casts a Sensei's Divining Top and creates a Spirit. He then taps out to equip his Reality Chip to Kykar. The equip is good, and Tyler then plays a City of Brass's land. He then taps the top to draw, and in response, Hidden Pyroblast Kykar, as the top would let him just draw his deck. Tyler does tap his city to top before he draws, but ends his turn there. Luke untaps, and in his upkeep, Chukimon sacrifices his ranger to pseudo-silence him. Luke then plays out a swamp and heads to combat. He sends his team at Chukimon, who has to double block to just not die, and drops a 3, with Luke passing after that. Chukimon untaps and plays a Plains as land. He casts a Skyclave Apparition and debates what to hit. The Dothy does stop his combo, and while he did debate the Yawgmoth, the unblockable shadow creature is a threat. Luke does sacrifice the Dothy to Yawg for a draw, putting the -1/-1 counter on the Dualcaster, with Chukimon then ending his turn with a Glow Rider. Hidden has a Gemstone Cavernous Land, and for 4 mana casts a Praetor's Grasp. I wasn't sure who I should target, and ultimately decide on Luke, since I think he's probably got the most spice out of all the decks. Unfortunately, I don't find anything game-breaking, and settle on a Necromancy, since there's a Sun Titan in Chukimon's graveyard. The Sun Titan then enters, and on ETB, I get back a Dockside. Dockside gains me 7 treasures, which gets me up to a total of 8, although I do drop to 3 to recast my commander. Korvold resolves, but with the ETB sack trigger on the stack, Luke fires off a Dismember. Although I'm lucky as I have extra treasures to sack and trigger Korvold, to grow the dragon to a 6/6 and draw me 2 cards. The dragon does shrink to a 1/1 from the Dismember, and with the original sack trigger still on the stack, Hidden fires off a Worldly Tutor. He finds an Eternal Witness to put on top and finally resolves the sack trigger, with Hidden eating his Dockside. Then with his remaining floating mana, he cracks another treasure for a Korvold trigger and uses the 2 mana to cast the Mana Vault. Tyler takes 3 from his crypt and another 2 from his tomb to recast his commander again. The bird resolves, and unfortunately he's still mana short to really do anything, and spends 2 mana on his top, gaining a spirit, although he sacks the spirit 4 mana to top.
Look at top 3. And cry a little inside.
Tyler then ends his turn with a tapped Mystic Monastery. Luke takes 3 from his crypt, and don't mind the jump, the camera actually died on me, and thank you to all the players who stayed as I ran to my hotel room to grab a spare battery pack. Okay, we return to see Luke cast a post-mortem lunge to bring Gary back once again from the brink, who on ETB drains the table for 7, taking Chukimon out of there and nearly Tyler as well. Unfortunately, this takes the Sun Titan out of play. Luke then plays a Marsh Flats, cracking it to grab a swamp. He then heads to combat, and the lunge gives Gary haste to let him swing out at Tyler to take him out as well, which is understandable as Tyler had the win on his next turn, assuming he didn't die to his mana crypt. Luke then ends his turn casting a Soul Ring. Hidden starts his turn with a Mausoleum Secrets. He grabs a Saw in half and heads to combat. He sends Korvold at Luke, and after sacrificing the Dualcaster to Korvold, hits him for 9. Then on his second main, Hidden shocks in an Overgrown Tomb and casts an Eternal Witness, which on ETB grabs the Dualcaster Mage. Next up is his Tutored Saw in half, which targets the Eternal Witness. Now Luke did have a chance to respawn by sacking a creature to Yawgmoth, but if he did, Hidden could then flash in the Dualcaster Mage, which would have made him sack the rest of his board in order to just not die. So he lets it go, with the 2 Eternal Witnesses triggering. Hidden grabs the Sawn Half and the E-Whip back to hand. Luke takes another 3 from his crypt and then sacrifices Gary to Yawg to kill off one of the E-Witness tokens. Next, he pays 4 life and discards a card to proliferate the Yawg.
Are you gonna give a +1/+1 counter to my Korvold?
He proliferates again, ditching a useless swamp, doing it for a 3rd time to pitch a Delta. 2 life then gets him a Village Rites, sacrificing the Yawgmoth for 2 more cards. A Mox Amber then comes out, with him tapping out to cast a Black Sun Zenith to give Korvold -9/-9 and getting back his Dothy Voidwalker. Hidden does have a response, as he then casts his Sawn Half, targeting his Eternal Witness, and holding priority, flashes in his Dualcaster Mage. The Mage resolves and on ETB creates a copy of Sawn Half, letting the Sawn Half target the Dualcaster Mage. Then with 2 more Dualcaster tokens, each target the original Sawn Half, create a copy, and then create more Dualcaster Mages, letting Hidden gain infinite Dualcaster Mages. The Korvold then will die, but unfortunately Luke does not have any mana left, and on Hidden's turn, he swings out for the game. Also, as a little bonus, we do have a little pack opening, so you guys can watch that as well. But stay around, as I do have the game review.
Alright, I'm still recording, so so you said this is for your LGS? This is
For my
your
virtual game store, yeah.
virtual
So
game store?
I sell these $1 packs. I do pull games, pack breaks, all sorts of stuff on live. So.
And is that the same name as your channel? Or?
Yep, Celestial Games. Celestial
Games.
Games. You hear if I say the whole title?
Go for it.
CelestialGamesFlorida.com.
Okay.
There you go.
Alright, is this like the same pack layout or?
Kind of. It's just there will be a rare at the bottom, as well as you get a foil and a land. Whether
So is this the rare or?
if you want to flip it, I can't remember. No, that's the land.
Okay. So I got a bird. I got a trainway station. I love this card. I used to play it in a mono red Duretti.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's really fun in Brea. You can go infinite with Brea. It's
Yeah,
so
that's
funny. You just like Reckless Fireweaver.
Start playing. I really love the art on this. The migrate.
So many combos.
Brea is silly. Brea is silly.
Jade, Armor Griffin. Excellent limited tail swipe.
Yep. Tail swipe.
Back draw. Oh.
I tried to spice up each pack, mixing up with different formats. So there's a little bit of everything for everybody in my packs.
Shipwreck Dowser. That card is sweet.
It's so good.
Maybe not for like cEDH, but like
That seems really cool. And it's a Wizards.
I love like Saw and Half Panel loops, Ghostly Flicker loops.
Grafted War Gear, and then Dusk Mantle Seer. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player reveals the top card. Oh, it's like a larger bob.
Yeah.
And then I got a full. I don't know how to pronounce it. Chain Dancer.
Philology Chan Dancer.
Uh huh.
This is a great like sack out
Lahi.
too.
Oh yeah, the Grafted War Gear is it's got a lot of utility.
Yeah,
What'd
Giant
you get?
Wizard.
I got
Oh, you wanted an endless detour.
Endless Detour. This card's, I like this card.
Yeah, I
It's
do too.
It's very interesting. That's a lot of versatility.
Mm-hmm.
I like kind of like Fencer effects.
I even slapping some infect into these packs. Who doesn't like a little infect?
I love it.
It's fun for like a little like
Star
start.
Spider.
That's kind of like the idea, and literally the packs are 99 cents.
Yeah,
99 cents. Oh.
Yeah, for one of them.
a lot better than Wizards.
Ow. But I do like
Shipwreck
poking
Dowser
stuff, and like this is what I love doing.
Fire Cannonade. I believe that's a Pioneer. Not
That
Pioneer.
that's
Papa.
played in cEDH too.
Oh, is it?
It is. It's an instant speed pyroclasm.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
And then
Ooh, Painful Case. That's a solid card. Also
I do, yeah.
And before I get on to the game review, I want to thank a special Patreon supporter, Josh Should, for his continued support of the channel. Game review. Well, that was a blast. Talk about getting stopped. I know Tyler sure did. Although, he had it almost a few times, and it's always better to be presenting wins than trying to stop them. Although, I was the same way. That swords actually did stop me, but I think it was a blessing in disguise,
as that gave me the added life total I needed to survive all those Garys. I'm sure if my life total was a bit lower, Luke would have just gotten another Gary and probably wiped me out. But luckily for me, the sword saved me. Although unfortunately, Chukimon who cast the swords did not survive very well, especially when I blew up his board with the culling ritual. Unfortunately, he had such a good start, but it was all for naught, and he wasn't able to keep up the card advantage. But I guess that's just how some games go. I want to thank everyone who played, and as a reminder, I'm a community ambassador for Monarch Media, and they're partnering with LotusCon to bring a super cool cEDH event later this year, and I can't wait to see it. So if you're interested in finding out more, check the link down below. And thanks for making it to the end of the video, and remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.